I hope that this is the last presentation before the last keynote. I hope to get you as inspired as many of the presentations I saw so far. Please let me know in the end if I can really inspire you to go to your organizations and do really amazing stuff. Before we get started, I would like to know from the audience who here works as a product manager, a product owner, or something of the kind. Please raise your hand. All right, almost all of you. And how many of you that are product managers and product owners work in Agile corporations? Please raise your hand. All right, half from the initial one. And now, take back that question once more, but let me ask you in a different way. How many people here work in truly, really, 100% Agile corporations, whatever that means? Please raise your hand. All right, one person. I want to talk to you afterwards, okay? Yeah, this is a question we get all the time, right? Are we Agile? And usually the answer we get is something like this. You know, is this Agile? And if you go deeper and we ask more and we say, okay, if you are Agile, what's your process like? And we say, this is what we do every single sprint. Okay, that's not bad. And how long is your sprint? And they say, well, your sprint lasts 6 months. We spend around 3 months doing requirements in design, implementation. We may spend 1 month or less, and then we spend all the rest time in quality assurance. All right. And how much time do you, and how frequently do you release? Every sprint. All right, so every 6 months you release. And you go further and you say, when you have this product in your hands, 6 months after, and you release, how does that like? And how do you feel? And why do you do it? Yeah. Yes, exactly. This is why we do it. So let's take a step. Let's take a pause and take a step back. 2001, a couple of guys were completely frustrated at how they have been doing products. And they have been doing these things called postmortems, which means that basically all the products fail. Otherwise, you would not do a postmortem. And they came up from this mountain with an idea, which they called Agile. And they created something called the Agile Manifesto, which many of you, I guess, already are familiar with. Basically, they said that it's more important to have people communicating with each other over any process and tool. It's also important to have working software instead of comprehensive or exhaustive documentation, that you collaborate to the customer, with the customer, to achieve the goal that we want to, instead of negotiation and plan and seeing whatever comes out 6 months after, and that you respond to change and over following a very specific and strict plan, because changes do happen. And so the reflection that I want to say right now is that Agile is not about the things that we do. It's about the things that we are. It's about a sense of being. We cannot truly be or refer to us as Agile if we do not feel the Agile values inside of us. So if this is more or less a drawing, we need to be more or less in the middle. So of course we have to do Agile practices, but we also have to believe in the practices that we are doing. Otherwise, the values of the practice are not transmitted to everyone we are working with. And so, hello everyone. My name is Fred. I'm a frequent flyer. I always travel low cost. I'm not a comic fan, although it may seem otherwise. I'm a terrible sketcher, but I always try to fight for a better world. Sometimes I found a bit of kryptonite, but I always try to find the way to make a world better. I've been 13 years in the industry. I've worked in more than 7 companies, 15 organizations. I've been there for 6 months to 3 years, and I've worked with 4 to 60,000 employees. Of course, that I did not officially work with 60,000 employees, but I have been in organizations that the work that I have done together with many has affected close to 60,000 employees. And regardless of the role, the label that I am given in all of these organizations, software engineer, user experience specialist, CTO, product owner, regardless of the label, I always believe that I go in an organization to disrupt it, to find a way to inspire it, and then change it for something better. I've been there. I've been there for 6 years. For 6 years, I failed, and I failed miserably, and I wasn't happy together with all my colleagues. So when I speak about Agile, I think that I know what I'm talking about, at least from the traditional project manager view. And it's the first time ever in many, many years that I show this slide that finally I can say that I have done more years of Agile than I've done of traditional development, and that makes me extremely, extremely happy. So that you understand what we are going to talk about, we are talking about a cloud-based solution that allows hotels to manage their properties from end to end. So from your check-in to your check-out, an invoice, maintenance to the room, housekeeping to the room, every single thing you imagine an hotel needs to do, this is what we want to do. And this company was bought by Booking.com in April this year, not the 1st of April, but it was close to that. Nevertheless, it's a big, big project. This is a major goal was to reach over 300,000 hotels in less than 2 years. And so when I got there, or even before I started, when I was hired, this was the reality. They had 3 developers, no code. They had a version, of course, of it because they were required for some reason, but they had no code of the new version. They had hundreds and hundreds of pages of documentation and architecture and how things will look like in 6 years when nothing has yet started. They had no development process, no plan, exception a date. They want to release in a specific date. I think that's very familiar to you. They had no culture regarding Agile or UX. And speaking about UX, I have no idea how these guys were bought because the UX and the UI, the experience was, well, I think you get the picture. So I was given a challenge. First day of work, one of the persons that hired me, the co-founder, said to me and said, Fred, I'm leaving now in 1 hour to a trip and I'm going to come back in 5 days. And I want you to build a backlog. I want you to have a plan in 5 days. I want you to start development. I want a second version of the product in 6 months, and I really have high expectations on you. And he left. And I started wondering, you know, and I said, this is a very, very powerful recipe for failure, right? Illusion of control, belief in the unreal, and high expectations. 3 things that match terribly. So I panicked, of course, like everyone, and I started Googling how the hell I build a product backlog in 5 days. But Google didn't help me, unfortunately. So I said, where to start? And I started looking everywhere. I saw that there were documents that specify what they wanted to do. I saw the first version of the product. I really, really saw it. And I saw a big document with everything that was missing and that the clients didn't like or the clients wanted to improve. I saw all the hundreds of pages of documentation that we were going to do next. And I also saw a lot of things written in papers and notebooks spread across the organization. And then I also started speaking with people. And I think that another thing that becomes familiar to you more and more is that when I start asking people, where are we going? They all say different things. No one knows where we want to be in 5 months. So I was puzzled, of course. I didn't know what to do. I was really in panic. But I felt that I needed to accomplish 2 things. One thing was that I needed to bring awareness. So I needed to make people conscious that they had no idea what they were talking about in terms of delivering the same thing. And of course, I wanted some kind of agreement. I wanted people to feel that they are in the same boat, striving for the same vision to accomplish the same goal in the end. And so this is how we build a backlog in less than 5 days. So where we start. First day, we gather the requirements. So this is my first day at work. I set up a meeting of 2 hours with all the employees. So at that time, we were already 4 developers, and there was a lot of people in marketing, sales, customer support for the previous version, the founders, or one of the founders, because the other one has gone on a trip. And I said, you know, this is my first time at work, and I set all the team to go, like 10 people to go to a meeting of 2 hours. Of course, they don't look at me that happy. But the goal was, more or less, I tell them, okay, we want to achieve a couple of things, and I identify, don't worry, you'll see that in detail. And then before doing that, I got together with the co-founder, and I say, okay, if you want to think about the requirements, how would we categorize it? How would we help people to identify what we are talking about? And so we came up with a couple of, let's say, functional areas or system areas where, for example, bookings, everything that is regarding a reservation, planning, and so forth, everything that is regarding guests, and so forth, just to help people brainstorm about the requirements of the product. And when I say people, I mean everyone, even people that had just joined the company 1 week ago. They are here to collaborate in this thinking process. And so they did. They had 1 hour and a half to come up with the best number of requirements that they could, and I was happy with that. This is the result of everything they could come up with bookings. For example, the ability to modify a reservation, the ability to assign a room during check-in, and so forth. This is an example of reports. We want reports on availability, which is another word for occupancy. We want dashboards to show to the hoteliers how they're doing in performance and so forth. So they really come up with really good stuff. I mean, I think it was more than 100 requirements over 1 hour and a half. And the most powerful thing of this was not the requirements or not the post-its, was that people were speaking for the first time. This was actually the most valuable thing of this meeting. They were actually saying, what do I mean by preset reports? Why do I mean by an inventory report? And this is when magic actually starts happening. And an magical moment, I think, and very, very powerful moment was when we did a retrospective. Because 3 things happened. We gave people an opportunity to think about things that they liked about this workshop and things that they would have improved, which often people are not given an opportunity to say their opinion. And also, we gave them the opportunity to see the changes that they have suggested immediately the day after. For example, they said, make it shorter, and the day after they saw a meeting of only 1 hour. And they saw that, wow, an improvement can take 1 day in less than, or instead of 6 months, like it usually does in my company. So it's a powerful message. And another powerful message was that this meeting took exactly 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. I asked everyone at the end of the retrospective to look at the clock, and the clock was matching 6 o'clock in the afternoon for everyone, to the exception of 1 minute or 2, of course. But that was a powerful message as well, is that you can do a lot of stuff, and even if you don't have more time, that's fine. And you show this message that I respect your time. If I invite you for 2 hours, then I respect you, and I know that you have other things to do. And in these 2 hours, you do the best you can, no more, no less. So I think the reflection here is that it's very important when we are identifying the requirements for whatever we want to do, being a product or improvements in the company, that we join with the people that are actually going to be part of what we are doing. So the main stakeholders, and it's not just the investors or the co-founders, it's actually everyone that is involved in the process. Day 2. We had to estimate. So now that we had all the requirements, we have to estimate. And there are many, many techniques for estimation. I found one really cool that I tried it out. I never tried it before. It's called Swimlane estimating, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, it's 5 columns, or in this case, 7 columns. 1, 2, 3, 7 columns. And I just said to everyone, whatever is on your left is small, and whatever is on your right is large. Now, you move the post-its from the tables, so 100 post-its in the tables, and you put it on the wall. And you don't, the only rule it is that every time you put a post-it, everyone needs to agree that that's the right position for that specific post-it, which means, again, that people have to talk, which people usually never do. And so they did. For less than an hour, they moved all the post-its, and every time they moved the post-it, they spoke, and they gained more knowledge about what they want to build. And this is how it looked at the end of the day. As you see, there are no values, there are no numbers on top. At this moment, it was made no sense. It was not worth to talk about story points or anything of this kind. So we were halfway through, and the reflection here in estimating is don't waste too much time with it, because reality is that we only do guess. We don't do more than that. We are humans. We are born with this capability of failing at estimating everything we want to do. So just do the best you want to do, and keep it at there. The third day, I had this necessity of feeling, all right, so we spoke about the requirements, but now, are they very complex? Are there something we can do it right now? Do we need a little bit of development? Is there risk there? So we decided to go, in this case, in a session of 1 hour and a half, again with all the team, we decided to go again to each post-it and classify it between something that is very easy to develop, something that is complex to develop, and something that we have no idea what we're talking about from development point of view. And more or less, we assess not only the technical challenge, but we also assess the risk. And so people talked. during an hour, hour and a half, and again, time box, which means that when it was over, and we did not achieve all of it, but we achieved the majority of it, and that's, again, the goal. And at this time, at the end, when it finished, I said, okay, guys, do you think that we will work on something smaller than the things that are here on the left? And they said yes. And so, okay, I could have put a 3, I could have put a 2, any number, and I decided to put a 5. And then I did more or less our Fibonacci scale. I think I failed in the number there, but regardless. Then, very easily, I had an estimation of size. And that was just an hour and a half of the team. And again, they were speaking about it. So the reflection here is that whenever you all talk about the complexity and the risk, you have to do it with your teams, because in the end, the teams are the ones that are going to build it. So they're the ones that, in above to everyone else, have to be conscious and aware of where they are going to put themselves in the next couple of months or years, depending. Prioritize, day 4. This took half an hour. So we had all of this, and I asked only one co-founder because the other one wasn't there. He was actually arriving this day. He lied to me. He said it was 5 days, but he arrived on the Thursday. And so I took this, and I say, okay, I created 4 rows in another wall, and I used the Morse code technique, which is must have, should have, could have, or won't have. And I just asked the co-founder, and then when the other one arrived, the co-founders to just move the post-its from one side to another. Very simple. Just move. And they moved. They were not very happy, but they moved. And there we have it. We have the must-have, the should-have, the could-have, and the won't-have. And then, of course, if we are going to start with the must-have, what is the priority there? So I created another wall, and I said, now move here. And they put everything on the right, on the left that is high priority, and everything that is on the right, low priority. And I had a really key picture of what we wanted to build. Awesome. Prioritizing is key to identify the 20% of things that we believe will bring 80% of the value. This is a variation, probably, I don't know if I just invented it or not, but it's a variation of the Pareto rule. But you can say whatever you want as long as it has the number 20 and the number 80. So 20% of the work that brings 80% of the value, or so we believed. Day 5, now we need a plan. And so, of course, when the guys saw this, they said, all right, so this is what we're going to build, but where do we start? And I say, okay, so let's break it into 4 releases. Just imagine 5 months, 4 releases seems more or less okay. They asked why not 5. I said, why not 3? And we agreed on 4, that was basic. And then I asked them again to move, and they just did, moved. It took again 30 minutes. Only the co-founders, no team here was involved. And then we had all of this. And then they were saying, hey, where are all the other post-its? Because we want all of the other features also as well in 6 months. And I tried to say it, and Rargis said, look, guys, this is the thing that we are going to focus on first. Of course, we are going to do everything else. We have it on post-its, do not worry. Of course, I did not know that the cleaning woman would take all the post-its to the garbage the day after. Fortunately, I took pictures, so I was not fired the day after. I could continue a bit more. And we more or less planned what we wanted the first release to be, and we kind of sketched it very quickly on the board, and this we did with the team. We said, I mean, you won't understand this. I think I don't understand this either. But basically, for the first demo, we would have the CEO of Booking.com and also the CEO of Priceline, which is the biggest or the 3rd biggest internet company in the world, and he was going to go there. And we had the idea of let's do a live demo, not of a prototype, but a first version of our product, a first release that we're going to demo live to one of the most important persons in the world in this industry. And just before that, we created this amazing thing that I call the product wall. I spend most of my time in this wall. I take care of it. I touch it very carefully because I'm so proud of it. And the amazing thing is that it shows very visibly what we are working on. What we see in rows is the increments, the iterations or the sprints, wherever you want to call it. And then you have the functional areas, and you will see that in each sprint we are touching different areas. And this enables us to move, prioritize, to descope, to in-scope, to do whatever we want. And we do it visually. We don't need any tool to do this. The demo, we call it the Darren demo. It was actually pretty powerful. I did a joke in the beginning just to relax everyone. It turned out to be terrible because I said, so Darren, we're going to do something that Microsoft always fails, which is we're going to do a live demo. The demo did work, but I didn't know that the guy was CEO of Microsoft for 5 years in China. So that cost me a bit of problems, but still we succeeded, and we showed the first version of the product after 1 sprint. And it's 1 sprint, in this case, of 3 weeks. The first one we did 3 weeks. Everything else was 2 weeks. And the amazing thing is that between the 3 initial employees and 3 afters, we hired 7 more. So we were 10 employees at this moment. And we were building the architecture, we were building the production system, we were building the design. Everything was done in 3 weeks, and we had a releasable product. Not only that we demoed, but we can also show to the hotel so that we get feedback and we get we get it moving. So I think the reflection here is important to have a vision and a plan, as long as we know that this will also change eventually in the future. I remember very well at this day when we ended the product wall, and I said, all right, we have it. And I said, well, we're going to move this up and down. And the co-founder said, no, we are not going to change a thing. I know exactly what we want to build in the next 5 months. I have no idea. I have idea that nothing will change. And I tried to argue that things would change, but it was not worth. And I kind of remember this metaphor, and I'm not comparing him with the child, but again, it's a metaphor about the child that you know that it eventually will touch the power cable, and you say, you will get hurt. But she or he will touch the power cable, and only then he will learn. And so I thought the same here, and I say, okay, why should I convince him that things will change? Why don't I just wait for it? And things when change is much a more powerful communication than me just saying it's going to change. So to build a backlog, in my opinion, the things that you need to do is just to identify, estimate, classify, prioritize, and do a plan. Of course, there's many variations of this. You can look up. There's a couple of links in the end. I did find some things that helped, of course. But this is more or less how you can do it. 3 months after, we were, I believe, doing Agile. So we were not Agile, we're not being Agile, but we're doing Agile. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the things that we were doing. We are doing weekly meetings called the groomings, where we just meet with the team and we discuss the things that we want to build next. This brings awareness, lowers risk, identifies what we want to do, what we don't want to do, and it's just an hour of time of the team, again, time-boxed, to find out about what we want to do. We also did specification by example. In this case, it was really poor examples. You just draw in the table, took a photo, put in the wiki, and that's it. And this is what we are going to develop. All the requirements are there some way, and all the requirements that are not, they will be found during the way. The team, at this time, there were 12, if I'm not guessing. It was one team of 12 people, or 13 people actually, and they did the daily Scrum. Every single day. They were there at 9:30, and they did it in less than 15 minutes. And this is a team of 13 people. Every single day. We moved originally from Jira that they were using as a way to manage. We moved to the visual backlog, just to give them the feeling of what is to manage things in a visual way so that they perceive the value of doing it. And they actually loved it. This is the room where they do the meetings. This is the room where they work. I don't have a better picture of it, but I think I'll show it in the end. But they could not meet all the 13 here in this space, so they would take it to another room and do it there. This is how the board looks like. It doesn't look any different from any other boards that you have likely to seen. This is at the middle of a sprint, more or less. One thing that is missing here, and I think you can see, is that the team is doing every single thing at the same time, and this is something very frequent that happens usually when we are starting to implement Scrum, is everyone is starting to do everything, and of course we run a very big risk of failing everything at the end. But sometimes we need to fail in order to learn by experience, as my friend Steven just said in the previous talk. And a thing happened that was very interesting was that we did this and we explained the developers the value and they started using it. And I went a week for Seattle for a project meeting, and when I came back, I went to the marketing and the sales side and they had this. And this was very, very happy moment for me, because they went by the post-its and they see, what is these yellow things and why are people having fun while we are bored in the other side of the room? And so they decided to take it. They had no coaching. I was not there. No one else was there that could help them, and they just did it, and it started working for them. And it's just doing by inspiration. They did their own backlogs, burn-down charts. They draw it. This is one sprint. This is another sprint that didn't work that well. This is a more awkward sprint, but still a sprint. And they also did every single sprint. So every single interaction of 2 weeks, the UI and UX team members, let's say, they would test every concept and everything that we would build either with local people in the team for basic things like where is the login, where is the logout, and so forth. But everything else, they would go to the hotel because at the end of every sprint, we had a product version that we could show to the hotels. And we got that feedback incorporated every single week. And that helped us to prioritize the backlog better. This is a review session where the team shows everything that they have done. And here's just me pointing the things that I want to improve and the things that I really disliked and I wish that be changed immediately. The team does the retrospective. They talk about the things that went good and the things that didn't went so good. And that adds a lot of value because they discuss about how they can improve as a team. And this is how the room looks after a retrospective. We have the retrospective on the table there. They use the burn down chart. They use the definition of done. If you don't know the definition of done, it's just to avoid this specific example that is you ask for a person, so how you're done? And the person says yes. And then you test it, and it breaks in your face every single time. So to avoid that, you create something called the definition of done, and you say, you can only tell me that it's done once you check every single box, otherwise never use that word. At least in the beginning to scare them off a little bit, and then it goes with the flow. And on the right is the working agreement, which is basically things that the team has agreed among themselves to be more productive and to do more amazing stuff. And they build an awesome product. This is how it looks like, the login page, wonderful design, wonderful experience that evolved across time. And compared with the traditional projects, we did this having an immense amount of fun. This was really something that I hadn't had in many years in many companies that I had the opportunity to work. Now, let me take you 2 months after and show you what I believe is being agile. And of course, you can challenge me in the end, but this is my perception of a team being truly agile, or close to it. This is a planning session. At this time, the teams were split by 2 instead of one big team of 13. They now have understood the basic values of Scrum and Agile, and they could do things on their own. This is a team doing a planning session. There is no product owner here. They're actually picking the items from the backlog directly and just deciding how they are going to work. There is no intervention here from management, from product manager whatsoever. Only product owner to say, I have a question, and they come here to clarify it. This team is using velocity-driven planning, which means that they estimate with story points and they commit if they have available space. This team, however, is using commit-driven development or planning, which is basically they discuss all the things and identify the very small tasks, and they sum up all the time, and they subtract it from the availability and decide whether or not they are ready to commit. Again, here, there is no product owner. The team is doing this by themselves. They meet every single day. In this case, 2 teams meet at 9:30. They start their own daily sessions, and they do this without anyone being present. No co-founder is here. No product owner is here, and they do it because they have understood the value of meeting every single day and agreeing on the things that they are going to work. It's not a question of doing, it's a question of understanding why you are doing this and what is the value that you can gain from doing it. They also started to create their own identities. One team called themselves on their own, they call themselves the Space Invaders, and they start putting post-its everywhere and things like that. Another team had a designer, and they did their own logo. They called themselves Tango with the Django, and they start spreading their image across everywhere. You could see it in the other places of the room. You can see it in many ways. They did it many things. And again, you do this after you understand the values of being agile, not because someone told you, hey, you need to create an identity. They needed to create an identity, and they did this because they wanted to. This is also so interesting. This is a demo review. I was in Seattle at this moment once more, and I was not there. There was no product owner, and they know that they had a sprint review at the end of the sprint, like they always do. They did not call to ask me what do I do because I'm not there. They just did it. They invited everyone in the company, and they showed every single thing that they have done. And you know what? They got feedback. They got ideas. They got improvements. They got things that they have done wrong. And they did it because they thought this has value. And this, in my opinion, is becoming agile. They did the retrospectives. One team uses one technique, another team uses another technique, because they found out that if they talk about each sprint in the end, they are able to come up with improvements that they are owners of doing these improvements in the next sprint, and they are capable of doing it because we show them that they are capable of doing it. We show this value to them. So let me try to recap and try to do it a little bit with the drama. We are in sprint 9. This is 11th of November, a day that I will never forget. This is probably our best sprint, and I don't just say because the drawing looks almost perfect, but because the teams were actually starting to feel what is the compromise between my availability and the time that I actually need to do things, and this is why the graph looks like that. But the co-founders came to us. They said, we need to meet in a room. That doesn't sound good. And when we went to the room, we found someone there, and it was the director of human resources of Booking.com. This doesn't sound well at all. And so they tell us that they had a shift in strategy, that they had bought another company that would make them achieve their goal in a faster time than building this product. And so we were all laid off. Now, this is the letter that they gave me at that day. It was an awkward moment, but now I want to take you back to where we started. The Agile Values. You remember them, right? You can do whatever you want in your company. You can do Scrum, Kanban, XP, FDD, blah, 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 whatever you want. But all of these are processes. You can also do stand-ups, retrospectives, all the games that were spoken in the keynote, but these are all tools. But you really need to take care of the individuals and the interactions between them. This is the photo that we took half an hour after we discovered that we were all going to be laid off. You see anyone that is not smiling there? And the reason is not because we are being laid off and we are given an immunization. No, of course not. It's because we were working on something amazing, and it was not about the product. It was about the team and the relationships that the team has created among themselves and the things that they have learned that each of them will take, and they will go to each company, whatever it is in the world, and they will disrupt it, they will inspire it, and they will change it because they were inspired and they change. You can do whatever you want regarding documentations. You can write as many user manuals, technical specifications as you want, reports, but it's best to have a working software. And we did every single sprint. This was the last sprint at the middle. We had improved the performance, the user testing that we did every single sprints in hotels. It had improved significantly. They were happy because they were being involved and they were seeing the product being involved every 2 weeks. This is amazing for a customer. I think that nothing has more value than involving him in the process. And so this is much better than having a documentation. And then the other thing, of course, you can negotiate with your customers, with your new users and your investors and your other stakeholders, but nothing works better than collaborate with them to reach wherever goal you want to reach. And this was the day after we learned that we're going to be laid off. There's 4 liters there of beer that we drank in less than an hour because that was our mission, our goal. Of course, the retrospective was not that interesting, but still it was a very beautiful moment. And you can build a backlog, whatever technique I showed you here, you can use it. You can use any other. You can prioritize it, estimate it, build a plan, and so forth. But if you do not know how to respond to change, because as I told one of the co-founders 5 months before, things will change, and he said they will not. In this moment, I think that he finally understood that things can change. And this was the day that we signed legally the document that we were going to be laid off. We went partying until 5 or 6 a.m. We drank liters of beers and cocktails and other drinks that I cannot recall the name. I lost memory for most of the time. But again, we are all smiling. And so I want to try to wrap up. And every time I do a talk, regardless of what it is, I always give the same recommendation. And the reason is because it's the only recommendation that works. So if I can say one single thing that you guys can do right now, that would be just do it. Don't think about it, because if you think about it, all the reasons for not doing that will pop up. my wife, my kids, my house, the boss doesn't like me, my colleague doesn't like me, all the barriers and the reasons for not doing, they pop up. So just do it. And now you're going like, Fred, but do what? Do what? I don't know. Do whatever works for you, no more, no less, but do it. Please do it. And again, remember that Agile is not about what you do, but it's about what you are. Every single thing that you do in your life, being professional and personal, should reflect the values of Agile, because people will follow you. People will follow you if you talk about time box and then you arrive late to every single minute, then this never works. If you talk about time box and you say that you're going to finish the meeting, the talk in 36 minutes, and you do, then this shows a completely different message. To give an example, a very personal example, I got married in May. Very happy with that. It was an awesome challenge because we brought people, 120 people from more than 9 countries. And this was our product backlog. Does it look familiar? It's just Post-its on the wall with priority. The priority was the months. There were functional areas like the guests, the reception, me and my wife, the honeymoon, and all the other things. And there were Post-its saying if things were done or not done. And I can tell you this project was successful because I have the happiest customer that I have ever learned to know so far. And also my #1 fan. These are a couple of references. Please go there to your company and start doing it. Any questions, you're welcome now. Thank you so much. 36 minutes, by the way. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Inspired? Yes? Good. I met my goal. It's funny because when I did my master thesis that was supposed to last 2 years and it actually last 5, I was defending it between a big jury, and one of the most important persons in the jury said, you know, what would you change? Exactly the same question. And I felt curious about it. I think I gave the right answer that I will give you right now. I would not change anything because it's a little bit like you said in your previous presentation, is you need to learn by doing. You need sometimes to do things the wrong way to learn how you should do it in a better way. And sometimes you need to do it in the best way to find out what you can do even better. So I honestly don't think I would have changed anything. I had the best experience of my life. I never regret changing a company to 5 months and a half off being laid off. I honestly don't. Thank you. Please. Wow, for sure. Sorry? Of course, if I have any examples of doing things the wrong way and what I learned from that. Well, yes, I could say I've been doing the wrong things for 13 years and I'm still learning. I can tell you a personal example because I think they work very well. I had a relationship for 14 years and I thought that I was doing the wrong thing. And then I changed to Barcelona. I left everything. I came to Barcelona, and one day I'm in an Agile conference. You should really go to Agile conference. They are amazing. And I had these guys doing executive coaching, which is basically coaching you directly. And they saw me very depressed because I missed something in my life. And I said, I have to meet this person. I have to really meet this person. But you cannot just meet it, they said. And I said, no, I really need to. And at the end of the day, the executive coaches said, you have to meet this person. You're going to meet this person in the next week. And it happens to be that 5 days after this conference, it was in a Saturday, I met my wife. And this was an amazing thing. So what I want to say from here is that I think that although I've seen the things that have worked, every time I do things, I take the perspective that things can fail. And I'm opening to fail because I see every single thing as an experiment. I see that putting a wall, a visual board in a wall is an experiment, and this is what I try to sell to people, is that you're not going to get stuck with this forever. You are going to use it if you want it, but let's give it a try. because you already know that a week after or a sprint after you can talk about it and decide for yourselves that if this is something you want to continue pursuing or not. So I always think that I know nothing, and this is why when someone told me build a backlog in 5 days, I first Googled it because I have learned how to build backlogs for years, and I thought that I need nothing at that moment. So I always assume I'm going to fail, and everything else that comes for me is learning. I don't know if I answered your question, more or less. Sure. At my time at Hotel Ninjas, things that failed. Things that failed. It's a hard one because we really had a good time. But let me think about it. Things that failed. Yes, one thing that we failed was that when we entered and we started in the company, there was this architect that I called the waterfall architect. There was this person that wrote all the documentation and projected the architecture for 6 years. And for many months, I tried to convince the organization that this was not the way to go. And he had things very, very, very strict. So he would define the task that everyone would do it. He would assign it. So you would be responsible for the code you're touching and nothing else. And I was saying that, no, just, empower teams and let them share responsibility. And my co-founder and my manager were saying, if you do not appoint someone to be responsible, no one was going to be responsible. And I was always saying, no, that's not the truth. But I found out otherwise. When we did change this idea and we said everyone is responsible, it was complete panic. And we had to take a step back, not follow this approach. But since we were ninjas, we came up with this idea of the senseis. So we assigned shared senses instead of individual senses to parts of the application, which they were responsible for carrying it, for taking care of it. But anyone could change as long as they would carry it during, before, or after. And this is one thing I really think it failed significantly. But we recovered from it. Thank you so much.
It's more of a clarification. I understand that you gathered the user use cases
Yes?
based on conversations with the employees and the members of the company.
Mm-hmm.
When you had your first version right away, did you find that the feedback from the first version changed your ideas of the gathering of the use cases to begin with?
Definitely, yes. So although we had a perfect vision, and the reason why we thought we had a perfect vision was because the co-founders that have been there and have been acquired by Booking.com, they had built a version already, and they have spoken with hoteliers for many years, and so they have this perfect understanding in their mind of what to build. And we built with that understanding in mind, but when we took it immediately after Sprint 1 to 3 to 5 hotels, more or less, this was the first time we did it, we found out that not all of the things, but many of the things that we were doing, we were not doing it right. And we had to change it. And this was not a powerful message, let's say, to the co-founders in order that you need to be responsive to change, because more or less he already believed that we were going to get feedback. He already was convinced that things from this perspective would change. Do you want an example of what we changed? For example? That's correct.
And I think the risk is not identifying the key selling feature. That maybe when you got this first feedback, were you able to identify, what we should have done is this one thing that really was the driver? That's my question.
Right. From that point of view, no. We did capture the right feature. The right feature is what I showed you 2 times. It's a calendar. It's what hoteliers use every single moment of their day during the workflow to manage everything, from check-ins, check-out, every single thing. They use the calendar. And this was our first focus, not only because it was something that was visual that we could show to this CEO, to this executive that was going to see the demo, let's say it, but it was also something that we were very, very sure because our stakeholders, our internal clients, let's say, they had already experienced it in the past. Then I think that going by hotels, we found out minor things that we were not wrong and we needed to change. But the biggest thing, we had it right in this case from the beginning. But again, let me make sense. You are truly right that we should have tried to put the clients from the beginning. But again, it took us 5 days to gather this and took us 3 weeks to take it to the client. So if you consider that many times this process takes 3 months or more to just identify the requirements, there might be sometimes again for just trying to do a minimal value product and then getting feedback without involving the clients from day one. It might work depending on the context, of course. Continuing improving it. For example, so one of the teams had a Scrum Master. So they had one developer that took the Scrum Master training and he worked as a developer and a Scrum Master. That happens in many companies, as you know. So even though many companies have an Agile culture or may have an Agile culture, they don't necessarily hire at the beginning a dedicated Scrum Master, which I think they should, but in the beginning they might not. And so one thing, for example, that we continue to improve was that one team had a dedicated Scrum Master, and in the other team I was the one doing the Scrum Master and the product owner at the same time. We asked the team, does anyone want to be a Scrum Master and a designer, a person that is completely creative, completely disorganized, touches everything and breaks everything? She says, I want to be the Scrum Master of the team. I was very, very scared at that moment. But one day that I had, just the week before this, I was on vacations, the previous retrospective, and I just tried to explain her and give her a bit of guidance of what I believe she could do in the retrospective, in the planning, and she goes like, oh, can I do this? Oh, can I do that? Oh, can I do this? And so just take the motivation of the people, I would say, and continuously find things to improve. I mean, I think this is a system that never reaches 100%. Of course, I'm exaggerating when I'm saying that we are agile, but I do think they were truly becoming agile. And it's just truly finding every single moment what things can we improve, and challenges would come. I mean, we would hire more people. At this moment, we had a really optimal team, but maybe 2 team members can come that disrupt the team, for example. So many other challenges would come. We had no product in the market, so we had no, let's say, issues coming from the client, so this was not affecting us either. We had releases every 2 weeks, but it was not for true production. So if these challenges would come, I would say that many things to improve would come as well. Thank you so much. Yes. So in FDD is one, feature-driven development is one of the, let's say, agile techniques that looks, in my opinion, much like waterfall. You have this concept of class owner, which means that if you are developing and you are designing a class, creating a class, you are the owner, and that means that you alone can touch it, no one else can touch it, and only you can do it. And that works fine if you are in the company for many months. But it may fail, for example, if you decide to go on vacations and someone has to touch your code and no one understands what your code means. Or it may fail if you find another job and you leave. So what happens to this component? So when we took everything and we said everyone is responsible for everything, that didn't work. But I also had the feeling that assigning just one person to a specific part of the code wouldn't make much sense either, because we would have the same problem. So we created the notion of sensei, which is not the owner, it doesn't own anything, but is someone that teaches, that cares, that guides people. And we did it shared. We invited 2 people to be senseis, not of classes, but of, in this case, we were using a microservice-based architecture, so of services, that they would be responsible for talking, or people would, if you want to touch something that is not, where you are not sensei of, you know to whom to speak, to get advice, because it might be done in another technology that you have not touched, to review your code, and to introduce practices like pair working, to avoid saying pair programming, or code reviewing, and so forth. These practices came from this notion. The team started doing it automatically, let's say, without saying to them, let's do pair programming. No, they started doing it because I say, I want to touch your code. And he says, okay, so come here and let's touch it together. And things just started happening in that. Did I respond to your question? It's quite of a? Yes, that's correct. Sorry. Thank you so much.
You had some
Yes. Yes, we did had a lot of tasks. Let's say, for example, setting up the deployment environment. That was, in our case, it was cloud-based. It was based in Amazon infrastructure. We had tasks for automatization of the tests. We were doing not test-driven development. We had unit tests, and we wanted to automate that. All of these tasks were part of the backlog as well, to respond to the first part of the question. And the second one, from experience, I do believe that it's very important to have a product owner that understands a little bit about technology, because otherwise it would be very difficult for a team to fight between the technical improvements they have to do to reduce technical debt or whatever you want to do to improve, to automate, and delivering features to the users. In my case, I do happen to have engineering background. I love programming. I'm not a programmer, but I like doing it, so I completely understand the need for automating or refactoring, and so I always try to balance the priority. And I also know that doing that also motivates the people, because they are improving their own code, and this in late translates to awesome motivation and awesome teams, I think. It was on a fly decision, at least for the moment. I would definitely say that once we are in production and we had pressure either from the stakeholders, the investors, or the end users, that might have influenced the priority. But during this experience was very, let's do it or let's not do it. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. So I only have less than a minute, I think. Just that you know, one team was using burn down chart and the other team was not. This is something I find very curious. So one team was thinking about story points, and this is how they committed to, and the other ones were actually defining the very granular time. So. That's very correct, yes. So in the beginning, let's say as the advocate or the Scrum Master, in the beginning when we were creating the teams, I would ask them to give estimates for the things that we were going to work on as a team, and then by myself I would start drawing this graph, and I would start having discussions with them near the burn down and say, okay, be careful here that we are going behind. Did we did something wrong? Do we want to change something? Do we want to descope any of these things? And get feedback from the team. So every single day, in this case, I asked the team, or I myself in the beginning, I would do it myself. I would update, I would go one by one and say, okay, how much time do you think you still need for this task? And people would say they're guessing, and I use that guessing and the graphs to guide the team in order to ensure that by the end of the sprint, they would meet the goal. So I don't think that looking back, we ever had a sprint that failed, because in the end, we were able to, by looking at the graph, and this was something that the other team couldn't do, although they could have done a graph, for example, based on the number of tasks, which could also work, but this team do very well, which was they were really in control of their time, and in the end, they were really doing it very nicely. So these metrics, this graph, help us to decide what we can deliver. And like, for example, the last 2 days is when the team would make very hard decisions about what they are actually doing and the things that they say, okay, we cannot commit to doing this anymore. And this for us was extremely useful. Okay, guys, thank you so much for your time.